Chapter 1. The rejection hit me like a physical blow, stealing the breath from my lungs as I stood frozen in the center of the Moonridge Pack's great hall. Every wolf in attendance had gone silent, their collective shock creating a suffocating atmosphere that pressed against my skin. I, Derek Blackstone, alpha of the Moonridge Pack, reject you, Arya Wells, as my mate and future Luna. The words echoed off the ancient stone walls, each syllable driving deeper into my chest like silver daggers. My wolf whimpered, a sound of pure anguish that only I could hear as she curled into herself, wounded beyond measure. Derek's steel-gray eyes held no warmth, no regret, only cold determination. The same eyes that had once looked at me with desire now regarded me as nothing more than an inconvenience to be discarded. You don't have what it takes to lead this pack, he continued, his voice carrying easily through the vast hall. A Luna needs strength, not weakness. She needs to command respect, not pity. My hands trembled at my sides, and I forced them into fists to hide the shaking. Around us, pack members shifted uncomfortably, some avoiding my gaze while others watched with cruel satisfaction. Especially Vanessa Thorne, Derek's chosen companion, who stood beside him with a victorious smirk painting her perfect features. Do you accept this rejection? Derek demanded, the formal words required to complete the severing of our mate bond. I wanted to scream, to rage, to shift and show him exactly how much strength I possessed. Instead, I lifted my chin and met his gaze with as much dignity as I could muster. I, Arya Wells, accept your rejection. The moment the words left my lips, agony tore through my chest. The mate bond, that golden thread that had connected us since my 18th birthday 3 months ago, snapped with an audible crack that resonated through my very soul. I gasped, stumbling backward as my wolf howled in devastation. But I didn't fall. I wouldn't give them that satisfaction. Then it's done, Derek said with finality. You have until dawn to leave Moonridge territory. Banishment. The word hung unspoken in the air, but its meaning was clear. Not only had he rejected me as his mate, but he was casting me out of the only home I'd ever known. I turned on my heel and walked toward the Great Hall's entrance, each step measured and controlled despite the chaos raging inside me. I could feel every eye on my retreating form, could hear the whispered conversations already beginning as pack members processed what they'd just witnessed. As I reached the massive oak doors, a voice called out behind me. Wait. I paused but didn't turn around. I couldn't bear to see Derek's face again, couldn't risk the fragile control I'd fought so hard to maintain. Your father's ring, he said. You should take it. The heirloom my mother had worn, passed down through generations of pack Lunas. He was returning it like discarded trash, one final insult to add to the collection. I heard footsteps approaching, felt the warmth of another body near mine. But it wasn't Derek, the scent was wrong. Pine and leather instead of cedar and smoke. Here, a deep voice said softly. I turned slightly and found myself looking up at Kai Morrison, Derek's beta and childhood friend. His dark green eyes held something I hadn't seen from anyone else tonight, sympathy. He held out the delicate silver ring, its moonstone center catching the light from the hall's chandeliers. When I reached for it, our fingers brushed, and I felt a strange tingle of electricity that made my wolf lift her head with sudden interest. I'm sorry, he whispered, so quietly that only my enhanced hearing could catch the words. I took the ring and slipped it into my pocket, then met his gaze for a brief moment. There was something there, something that made my pulse quicken despite the devastation of the evening. Thank you, I managed to say. Then I pushed through the doors and out into the cool night air, leaving everything I'd ever known behind. But as I walked down the stone steps of the pack house, I couldn't shake the feeling that Kai Morrison's green eyes held secrets that could change everything. Chapter 2. 3 weeks of living as a rogue had taught me that survival was more about mental strength than physical prowess. I'd found shelter in an abandoned cabin deep in the neutral territory between pack lands, far enough from Moonridge to avoid patrols, but close enough to... What? Hope that Derek would change his mind. The thought made my wolf snarl with indignation. I was stronger now, leaner. Hunting for my own food and constantly watching for threats had honed my senses to a razor's edge. My wolf had grown fiercer too, less trusting, more protective. We'd learned to rely only on ourselves. The morning sun filtered through the cabin's grimy windows as I sorted through the meager supplies I'd managed to gather. Canned goods from an abandoned gas station, a few pieces of clothing that actually fit, and the medical kit I'd borrowed from a hunting lodge. Everything I owned could fit in a single backpack. A sound outside made me freeze, the crack of a branch underfoot. My wolf immediately went on high alert, ears metaphorically perked as I strained to identify the source. The footsteps were too heavy to be a rabbit, too deliberate to be a deer. Human, male, and moving directly toward my cabin. I grabbed the silver knife I'd taken to carrying and crept toward the window. Through the dirty glass, I could see a figure approaching through the trees. Tall, broad-shouldered, moving with the fluid grace that marked him as a shifter. My heart stopped when I recognized that particular gait, the way he carried himself with quiet confidence. Kai Morrison. What was Derek's beta doing in neutral territory? Had they sent him to drag me back for some trumped-up crime? Or worse, had Derek decided that rejection wasn't enough, that I needed to be eliminated entirely? I watched him approach the cabin door, noting that he carried no weapons, showed no signs of aggression. When he actually knocked instead of breaking down the door, I found myself genuinely puzzled. Arya, his voice carried clearly through the thin wood. I know you're in there. I can smell your scent. I pressed my back against the wall beside the door, knife ready. What do you want? To talk. That's all. Talk about what? Come to deliver another message from your alpha. There was a pause. Derek doesn't know I'm here. That gave me pause. A beta acting without his alpha's knowledge was serious business. The kind that could result in severe punishment if discovered. Why should I believe you? Because if Derek had sent me, I wouldn't have come alone, and I sure as hell wouldn't have knocked. Fair point. I considered my options. Kai had never been cruel to me, even when others in the pack had made their disdain clear. And that moment in the Great Hall, when he'd returned my mother's ring with such gentleness. Against my better judgment, I unlatched the door and opened it a crack, keeping the knife visible. Kai stood on the small porch, hands raised in a gesture of peace. Up close, I could see the exhaustion etched in the lines around his eyes, the tension in his shoulders. He looked like a man carrying a heavy burden. You look terrible, I said without thinking. A ghost of a smile crossed his features. Thanks. You look different. Stronger. Dangerous. Something in the way he said it sent a shiver down my spine. Not fear, but something else entirely. My wolf stirred with interest, which was ridiculous given everything that had happened. What do you want, Kai? He glanced around the small clearing, checking for threats out of habit. Can I come in? This isn't a conversation for open ground. Every instinct screamed at me to refuse, to send him away and maintain the safety of my isolation. But something in his expression, desperation maybe or determination, made me step back and allow him entry. The cabin felt impossibly small with his large frame inside it. He moved carefully, respectfully, keeping his hands visible and his movements slow. Nice place, he said, though we both knew it was anything but. It has running water, and no one tries to humiliate me on a daily basis. I call it an improvement. His jaw tightened. About that night. Don't. I held up my hand. I don't want your pity or your apologies. Derek made his choice. I've accepted it. Have you? The question caught me off guard. What's that supposed to mean? Kai turned to face me fully, and I was struck again by the intensity of his green eyes. You accepted the rejection, but you're still wearing his mark. My hand flew instinctively to my neck, where Derek's bite mark had left a faint scar. It should have faded when the bond was severed, but for some reason it remained. It doesn't mean anything. Doesn't it? He took a step closer, and I caught his scent again, pine and leather and something uniquely him that made my wolf perk up with interest. Arya, there are things about that night you don't know. Things about why Derek really rejected you. Enlighten me. Kai ran a hand through his dark hair, clearly struggling with how much to reveal. There's going to be a challenge. For pack leadership. And Derek's not as strong as he pretends to be. What does that have to do with me? Everything. His eyes locked with mine. Because the challenge isn't just for the alpha position. It's for you. Chapter 3. The words hit me like a physical blow, leaving me reeling as I tried to process what Kai had just revealed. What do you mean for me? I demanded, gripping the knife tighter. Derek rejected me. Publicly. The mate bond is severed. Kai's expression grew grim. That's what everyone was supposed to think. But mate bonds, they're more complicated than most wolves realize. Especially when one half of the pair hasn't truly accepted the rejection. I said the words. You said them, but you didn't mean them. Not in your heart. He took another step closer, and I could feel the heat radiating from his body. Your wolf never let go, did she? My silence was answer enough. He was right. My wolf had retreated, wounded and angry, but she'd never fully severed the connection. Some traitorous part of me had held on to hope, even after everything. The challenger knows this, Kai continued. Marcus Ravencrest, alpha of the Northern Territory pack. He's been watching our pack for months, looking for weaknesses. And when he learned about the rejection, he saw an opportunity. More than that, he saw a way to humiliate Derek completely. Kai's hands clenched into fists. Ancient pack law states that a rejected mate can be claimed by a victorious challenger. You'd become his prize, his symbol of conquest over Moonridge. The blood drained from my face. That's barbaric. It's the old ways. Most packs don't follow them anymore, but Marcus, he's a traditionalist. And Derek was foolish enough to invoke formal rejection protocols, which makes you fair game under the ancient laws. I sank onto the cabin's lone chair, my legs suddenly unable to support me. When? 3 days. He's already issued the formal challenge. Derek has to accept or be branded a coward and forfeit his position anyway. And you came here to warn me? I looked up at him suspiciously. Why? What's in it for you? Something flickered across Kai's features. Pain, maybe, or longing. Because you deserve to know what's coming. And because. He stopped, shaking his head. Because I can't stand the thought of you being used as a pawn in another man's game. There was something in his voice, an intensity that made my pulse quicken. My wolf stirred again, responding to an emotion I couldn't quite identify. What aren't you telling me? I asked softly. Kai was quiet for a long moment, staring out the cabin's small window. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. Derek isn't my true alpha. The confession hung in the air between us like a live wire. A beta admitting his alpha wasn't worthy of his loyalty was tantamount to treason. Then why do you follow him? Because until 3 weeks ago, I thought I didn't have a choice. He turned back to me, and the look in his eyes made my breath catch. But then I realized that loyalty isn't something you owe to a title. It's something you give to someone who's earned it. The air in the cabin seemed to thicken, charged with an energy I didn't fully understand. My wolf was practically vibrating with awareness, responding to something primal in Kai's presence. Kai, I started, but he held up a hand. There's more. Marcus isn't just coming for the pack leadership. He's coming with allies, 2 other Northern Territory alphas. Derek can't win this fight alone. Then he'll have to find allies of his own. He's tried. No one wants to risk supporting a weak alpha against a coalition. Kai's jaw tightened. Unless what? Unless his mate bond was real. A true Luna by his side would change everything. It would prove his strength, show that the moon goddess herself had chosen him for leadership. Understanding dawned like a cold sunrise. You want me to go back? To pretend the rejection never happened? I want you to have options, Kai said firmly. Right now, you're a sitting duck out here. When Marcus wins, and he will win, he'll come looking for you. But if you return to Moonridge before the challenge, Derek will never take me back. Not after what happened. He will if his survival depends on it. And yours does too. I stood abruptly, pacing the small space as my mind raced. Return to the pack that had humiliated me. To the man who'd crushed my heart in front of everyone. The very thought made my wolf snarl with indignation. But the alternative, being claimed by a brutal alpha who saw me as nothing more than a trophy, was infinitely worse. Why do you care what happens to me? I asked, stopping directly in front of Kai. Really? He was close enough that I could see the flecks of gold in his green eyes, could feel his breath on my skin. When he reached out to touch my face, I didn't pull away. Because, he said softly, his thumb tracing along my cheekbone, you're not the only one who's been pretending the mate bond doesn't exist. Before I could process what he meant, a howl echoed through the forest, long, mournful, and far too close for comfort. Kai's hand dropped immediately, his entire body going rigid. We need to go. Now. What is it? Scouts. Marcus is already moving his pieces into position. He grabbed my backpack and thrust it at me. How fast can you shift? Fast enough. I was already moving toward the door. Which direction? South. Toward Moonridge Territory. It's the last place they'll expect you to run. As we burst out of the cabin, another howl answered the first, this one closer. My wolf clawed at the edges of my control, desperate to shift and run. Arya, Kai called as I started to shed my clothes. Whatever happens, remember, you have more power than anyone has ever told you. Don't let them make you forget that. Then we both shifted, and the forest exploded into motion around us. Chapter 4. Running in wolf form beside Kai felt natural in a way that terrified me. Our wolves moved in perfect synchronization, as if we'd been running together for years instead of minutes. His dark brown wolf was larger than mine, built for power and endurance, while my silver-gray form was designed for speed and agility. Behind us, the pursuit grew closer. I could hear at least 3 sets of paws thundering through the underbrush, their breathing harsh and determined. Marcus's scouts were persistent, I'd give them that. Kai's wolf suddenly veered left, leading us toward a rocky outcropping that would mask our scent. I followed without question, trusting his knowledge of the terrain. As we leaped from stone to stone, I caught glimpses of our pursuers through the trees. Massive wolves with the distinctive black markings of the Northern Territory packs. We'd almost reached the far side of the rocks when one of them got lucky. The scout came out of nowhere, launching himself at me from above. I twisted mid-leap, but his claws still raked across my flank, sending fire through my nerves. My wolf yelped as we crashed to the ground in a tangle of fur and fangs. The northern wolf was bigger than me, all muscle and aggression. He snapped at my throat, but I rolled away and came up snarling. My father had trained me well before his death. I might be smaller, but I was faster. I feinted left, then darted right, my teeth finding purchase in his shoulder. He roared in pain and rage, trying to shake me off, but I held on grimly. Blood filled my mouth, his and mine. Suddenly, a blur of brown fur slammed into my attacker's side, sending him flying into a tree trunk with a sickening crack. Kai's wolf stood over the fallen scout, lips pulled back in a savage snarl that promised death to anyone who dared threaten me. The display of raw protective instinct sent a shock through my system that had nothing to do with fear, and everything to do with a primal recognition my human mind wasn't ready to acknowledge. Move, Kai's voice echoed in my head through the pack bond that shouldn't exist between us. More coming. I didn't waste time questioning how he could communicate with me telepathically. We ran. By the time we reached the border of Moonridge territory, my injured flank was throbbing with every step. The scent markers here were achingly familiar. Home, even after everything that had happened. We shifted back to human form in a grove of silver birch trees, and I immediately felt exposed without my wolf's enhanced senses. Kai tossed me a spare shirt from the emergency stash hidden in a hollow tree. Every pack maintained supply caches along their borders. "Let me see that wound," he said, his voice rough with concern. I lifted the shirt to reveal the claw marks across my ribs. They were deep but not life-threatening, already beginning to heal thanks to my shifter metabolism. "I'm fine," I insisted, but Kai was already kneeling beside me, his hand. "You're not fine. These need to be cleaned properly." His fingers traced the air just above the worst gash, careful not to cause more pain. "That was brave, what you did back there. Stupid, but brave. I can take care of myself." "I know." He looked up at me, and something in his expression made my breath catch. "But you shouldn't have to. Not anymore." Before I could ask what he meant, the sound of approaching footsteps made us both freeze. Multiple sets, moving with the coordinated precision of a patrol. "Moonridge border guards," Kai whispered. "They'll have heard the fighting. Will they help us?" His expression darkened. "Depends on who's leading the patrol." The answer came in the form of a familiar voice calling through the trees. Well, look what the cat dragged in." Vanessa Thorne stepped into the clearing, flanked by 4 other pack members. She looked exactly as beautiful and cold as I remembered, her blonde hair perfectly styled despite being on patrol duty. Her ice-blue eyes fixed on me with undisguised hatred. "The rejected little Omega, crawling back home with her tail between her legs," she sneered. "And you brought Derek's beta with you. How touching." "Vanessa," Kai said calmly, getting to his feet. "We need to see Derek immediately. There's been an incident." "An incident?" She laughed, the sound sharp and mocking. "You mean when you decided to abandon your duties to play rescue mission for Pack Refuse?" My wolf snarled at the insult, but I forced myself to remain calm. Losing my temper with Vanessa would only make things worse. "Marcus Ravencrest has scouts in neutral territory," I said, focusing on the immediate threat. "They're already positioning for the challenge." Vanessa's expression shifted slightly. She might hate me, but she wasn't stupid enough to ignore information about pack security. "You're lying." trying to manipulate your way back into the pack. I'm trying to keep this pack from being slaughtered. I snapped, my patience finally fraying. But if you'd rather play politics than protect your people, that's your choice. My people. Vanessa stepped closer, her hand moving to the silver knife at her belt. You're not pack anymore, little Omega. You're trespassing on our territory. The other guards shifted uncomfortably. Technically, she was right. As a rejected mate, I had no claim to pack protection. But the ancient laws that Marcus was exploiting worked both ways. Until the challenge was complete, my status remained complicated. Actually, Kai said quietly, she's not. Everyone turned to stare at him. The rejection wasn't completed properly, he continued, his voice carrying the authority of his beta rank. Ancient law requires a waiting period after formal rejection. Until that time expires, Arya remains a member of this pack. Vanessa's face flushed with anger. That's ridiculous. That's law, Kai interrupted. And unless you want to explain to Derek why you prevented crucial intelligence about enemy movements from reaching him, I suggest you escort us to the pack house. Now, the tension stretched between them like a bowstring. Finally, Vanessa stepped back, but her expression promised that this wasn't over. Fine. But she's your responsibility, Beta. And when Derek throws her out again, don't come crying to me. As we walked toward the pack house, Kai fell into step beside me. Thank you, I murmured quietly. Don't thank me yet, he replied grimly. The hard part is just beginning. But as we approached the imposing stone structure that had once been my home, I caught a familiar scent on the wind, cedar and smoke, tinged with stress and anger. Derek was waiting. Chapter 5. The pack house loomed before us like a fortress, its ancient stone walls bearing witness to generations of wolves who had called this place home. As we climbed the steps to the main entrance, I could feel eyes watching from every window. Word of my return had already spread through the pack like wildfire. The great hall felt smaller than I remembered, though nothing had changed in the 3 weeks since my exile. The same tapestries hung from the walls, the same massive fireplace dominated the far end of the room, and the same throne-like chair sat on its raised platform where the Alpha held court. Derek stood beside that chair now, his steel-gray eyes fixed on me with an expression I couldn't read. He looked older somehow, lines of stress etched around his eyes that hadn't been there before. Vanessa moved to stand at his right side like she belonged there, her hand resting possessively on his arm. So, Derek said, his voice echoing in the vast space. The prodigal mate returns. She's not your mate anymore, Vanessa interjected sweetly. You made sure of that. I forced myself to stand tall, to meet Derek's gaze without flinching. I'm here because this pack is in danger. Whether you want to listen or not is up to you. Danger. Derek's laugh was bitter. The only danger I see is a rejected wolf trying to worm her way back into a position she was never worthy of. Heat flared in my chest, anger and hurt mixing into a volatile combination that made my wolf pace restlessly beneath my skin. But before I could respond, Kai stepped forward. Marcus Ravencrest has accepted your challenge, he said bluntly. He's bringing allies. 2 other Northern Territory alphas, plus their warriors. They already have scouts positioned in neutral territory. The change in Derek's demeanor was immediate. His casual arrogance transformed into sharp attention, his alpha instincts recognizing the gravity of the situation. How do you know this? Because they attacked us, I said, touching the bandage over my healing wounds. 3 scouts, trying to capture me alive. They weren't there by coincidence. Derek's eyes narrowed as he studied the evidence of my injuries. Why would they want you? The question hung in the air like a challenge. I could see Vanessa's smug expression, could feel the weight of every pack member's attention. This was the moment of truth. Would Derek acknowledge what we both knew, or would his pride doom us all? You know why, I said quietly. Enlighten me. My wolf snarled at his deliberate obtuseness, but I kept my voice level. Ancient law. A rejected mate can be claimed by a victorious challenger. Marcus wants me as a trophy, proof of his complete conquest over Moonridge. Vanessa's face went pale. That's barbaric. That's tradition, Derek corrected grimly. The old laws that most packs have abandoned. But if Marcus is invoking them, then you're bound by them too, Kai finished. All of them. The implication was clear. If ancient law made me a prize to be won, it also meant the rejection wasn't as final as everyone had believed. Derek's jaw tightened as he processed the ramifications. This changes nothing, he he said finally. I rejected you for good reasons. Your weakness, your inability to command respect. My inability to bow down to your ego, you mean? I snapped, my patience finally breaking. I trained harder than anyone in this pack. I studied pack law until I could recite it in my sleep. I earned the respect of every warrior here through blood and sweat. The only person who thought I was weak was you. Because you are weak. Derek roared, his alpha power rolling through the room like thunder. You think strength is about fighting and studying? Leadership is about making hard choices, about putting the pack before personal feelings. Like the choice to reject your true mate for political gain? The words escaped before I could stop them, and the great hall fell deadly silent. Derek's face went white, then red with fury. Get out. His voice was deadly quiet. Get out of my territory before I forget that you were ever pack. Derek, Kai said urgently, you're making a mistake. Am I? Derek spun to face his beta, eyes blazing. Or are you? Following her around like a lovesick puppy, abandoning your duties to play hero. Maybe I should be questioning your loyalty as well. Something dangerous flickered in Kai's green eyes. My loyalty has never been in question, but neither has my judgment. And right now, my judgment says this pack needs its Luna if it's going to survive what's coming. She's not. She is. Kai's voice cut through Derek's protest like a blade. Whether you want to admit it or not, the mate bond still exists. I can smell it on both of you. Your wolves recognize each other even if your human sides are too stubborn to acknowledge it. Derek's hands clenched into fists. Even if that were true, it doesn't matter. I won't have a weak Luna endangering this pack. Then you'll have a dead pack, I said flatly. Because Marcus is coming whether I'm here or not. The only question is whether you face him with a united pack or a divided one. United? Vanessa laughed harshly. You think your presence here unites anything? Half the pack thinks you're a disgrace, and the other half pities you. That's not unity, that's chaos. Then maybe, a new voice said from the doorway, it's time for new leadership. Everyone turned to see Elder Patricia entering the great hall, her ancient frame moving slowly, but with unmistakable authority. At 93, she was the oldest wolf in the pack and one of the few still alive who remembered the old ways. Elder Patricia, Derek said, inclining his head respectfully. This is pack business. This is pack survival, she corrected, her voice sharp despite her age. And pack survival supersedes alpha pride. Her roomy eyes fixed on Derek with surprising intensity. Tell me, young alpha, do you know the full consequences of invoking ancient law? Derek's uncertainty was written across his face. I didn't invoke anything. Marcus did. By issuing a formal challenge, you accepted the old ways. All of them. Patricia's gaze shifted to me, including the trial of the true Luna. A chill ran down my spine. I'd heard whispers of the trial in ancient texts, but I'd thought it was myth, not law. What trial? Derek demanded. Elder Patricia smiled, and there was something almost predatory in the expression. The trial that will determine, once and for all, who is truly worthy to lead this pack. Chapter 6. The ancient laws were not kind to those who invoked them carelessly. Elder Patricia's words echoed through the great hall as she made her way slowly to the center of the room. Every pack member present seemed to hold their breath, waiting for her to explain what none of us fully understood. The trial of the true Luna, she began, her voice carrying despite its frailty, was created to resolve disputes when ancient bonds were questioned. When a mate pairing is challenged, either by rejection or by outside force, the moon goddess herself must decide who speaks truth. Derek's face had gone ashen. What does the trial involve? 3 tests, Patricia continued, settling herself carefully onto a chair that someone had quickly provided. Tests that cannot be faked or manipulated. Tests that reveal the true nature of one's wolf and one's worthiness to lead. Vanessa stepped forward, her usual composure cracking. This is ridiculous. Derek already chose me as his Luna. The rejection was witnessed by the entire pack. A rejection that was never properly completed, Patricia said mildly. Ancient law requires a cooling period of 1 full moon cycle. During that time, either party may invoke the trial if they believe the moon goddess was not properly honored in the original pairing. My heart pounded as the implications sank in. Who can invoke it? The rejected mate, the alpha, or? Patricia's eyes found Kai in the crowd. A pack member who believes the stability of the pack depends on the outcome. Understanding dawned like cold water over my skin. Kai had known about this when he came to find me. He'd been planning this from the moment he'd learned about Marcus's challenge. I invoke the trial of the true Luna, Kai said formally, stepping forward. For the good of the Moonridge pack. Derek whirled on him, fury and betrayal warring in his expression. You son of a bitch. You planned this. I planned to save our pack, Kai replied calmly. Whether you thank me for it later or exile me is your choice. The trial has been properly invoked, Patricia announced. By pack law, it must commence within 3 days. The participants will be Aria Wells and... Her gaze settled on Vanessa. The chosen substitute Luna. Wait, I protested. I never agreed to this. You don't have to agree, Patricia explained gently. You're already bound by the original mate bond, incomplete as it is. The trial will simply determine whether that bond was true or false. Vanessa's beautiful face twisted with rage. This is insane. I'm not even Derek's mate. We haven't completed the bonding ceremony. But you have claimed the position of Luna, Patricia countered. In the eyes of the pack and the ancient laws, that makes you a legitimate participant. Derek ran his hands through his dark hair, looking more shaken than I'd ever seen him. What are the 3 tests? The trial of strength, to prove the candidate can protect the pack. The trial of wisdom, to prove she can lead with sound judgment. And the trial of heart, to prove the mate bond is true and blessed by the moon goddess. And if I refuse to participate? I asked, though I already suspected the answer. Then you forfeit any claim to pack membership, and Marcus Ravencrest's right to claim you becomes absolute, Patricia said solemnly. There would be no sanctuary for you anywhere in wolf territory. The trap was perfect and inescapable. Participate in a trial that could expose the confused state of my feelings, or guarantee my capture by a brutal alpha who saw me as property. When do we start? I asked quietly. Tomorrow at dawn, Patricia replied. The first test will be the trial of strength. Both candidates will face the same challenge, alone. What kind of challenge? Vanessa demanded. Patricia's smile was enigmatic. The kind that reveals who you truly are when everything else is stripped away. As the crowd began to disperse, their voices rising in excited chatter about the unexpected turn of events, Kai appeared at my side. We need to talk, he said quietly. I nodded, following him out of the great hall and into the smaller council chamber where we could speak privately. The moment the door closed behind us, I rounded on him. You manipulated me, I accused. This whole rescue mission, bringing me back here, it was all to force this trial. Yes, he admitted without hesitation. It was. His honesty caught me off guard. I'd expected denials, excuses, anything but the plain truth. Why? Kai moved to the window, staring out at the pack grounds where wolves were already gathering in small groups to discuss the coming trial. Because Derek is going to get himself killed, and he's going to take the pack down with him. He's not strong enough to face Marcus alone, too proud to ask for help, and too stubborn to admit his mistakes. So you decided to fix things by throwing me into an ancient trial that could destroy what's left of my life. I decided to give you a chance to claim what was always rightfully yours. He turned back to me, and the intensity in his green eyes made my breath catch. You're stronger than Derek gives you credit for. Stronger than you give yourself credit for. And this pack needs that strength. Even if I win, what makes you think Derek will accept me back? The trial might prove our bond is real, but it can't change his feelings. Kai was quiet for a long moment. Maybe changing Derek's feelings isn't the point. What do you mean? Ancient law works both ways, Arya. If the trial proves Derek rejected his true mate unjustly, he met my gaze steadily. Then the moon goddess might decide he's not worthy to be alpha either. The implications hit me like a physical blow. You're talking about challenging him for pack leadership. I'm talking about doing whatever it takes to protect this pack, even if it means taking a position I never wanted. And if Derek fights you for it, then he fights me. Kai's expression was grim, but determined. But I won't let Marcus Ravencrest destroy everything our ancestors built. And I won't let him claim you as a prize. The possessive note in his voice sent a shiver through me that had nothing to do with fear. My wolf stirred restlessly, responding to something primal in his tone. Kai, I said carefully, why does this matter so much to you? Really? He was quiet for so long I thought he wouldn't answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. Because 3 weeks ago, I watched the woman I've been in love with for 2 years get her heart shattered in front of the entire pack. And I stood there and did nothing. The confession hung between us like a living thing. My heart hammered against my ribs as I processed what he'd just revealed. You what? I've loved you since the day you challenged Marcus Steele to a sparring match and knocked him flat on his ass, Kai said with a rueful smile. But you were Derek's mate, and I was his beta. So I buried it, pretended it didn't exist, convinced myself that loyalty meant suffering in silence. Kai, I'm not asking for anything, he said quickly. I know your heart belongs to Derek, even after everything he's done. But I couldn't live with myself if I didn't at least try to give you the chance to fight for what you want. Before I could respond, a commotion outside drew our attention. Through the window, I could see pack members running toward the main gate, their voices raised in alarm. What now? I muttered, moving to get a better view. A lone wolf stood just outside the territory markers. A massive black beast with silver markings that identified him as Northern Territory. Even from this distance, the raw power radiating from him was unmistakable. Marcus, Kai breathed. The wolf shifted, revealing a man in his 40s with steel-gray hair and scars that spoke of countless battles. When he spoke, his voice carried easily across the distance. Derek Blackstone, I've come to discuss the terms of our challenge, and to see the prize I'll be claiming when I defeat you. His cold eyes found me through the window, and his smile was predatory. Hello, little Luna. I do hope you're ready for a new home. Chapter 7. The pack grounds erupted into chaos as Marcus Ravencrest's words echoed across the territory. Warriors rushed to defensive positions while pack members herded the young and elderly toward the safety of the inner buildings. But all eyes remained fixed on the imposing figure standing just beyond our borders, radiating confidence and barely restrained violence. Derek appeared on the pack house steps within minutes, his alpha power rolling across the grounds in waves. Even from the council chamber window, I could feel the force of his rage. Marcus Ravencrest, Derek called out, his voice carrying the authority of his position. You're not welcome on Moonridge territory. I'm not on your territory, Marcus replied with amusement. I'm observing the ancient protocols. Surely you know the laws regarding formal challenges. Derek's jaw tightened. State your business and leave. My business is simple. I've come to discuss the terms of our combat, as is my right, and to get a proper look at what I'll be winning. His gaze found me again through the window, and I suppressed a shudder at the hunger in his eyes. She's lovely, Derek. I can see why you'd want to keep her, even if you're too weak to deserve her. She's not part of this challenge, Derek snarled. Isn't she? Marcus laughed, the sound cold and mocking. Ancient law is very clear, young Alpha. A rejected mate becomes forfeit to the victor. Unless, of course, you'd like to formally rescind your rejection? The trap was elegant in its simplicity. Derek could publicly reclaim me and void Marcus's right to my person. But doing so would be an admission that his rejection had been wrong. It would undermine his authority and give his enemies ammunition for future challenges. Or he could maintain his position and hand me over to a brutal alpha who saw me as property. Aria Wells is no longer my concern, Derek said finally, and I felt something inside me wither at the words. Excellent. Marcus's smile was triumphant. Then we understand each other. The challenge will take place in 3 days, at the traditional ground between our territories. Single combat, no interference, ancient rules apply. Agreed. And when I defeat you, I'll be taking not only your territory and your pack, but your little rejected mate as well. I do hope she's been keeping herself pure for her new alpha. The crude innuendo sent a wave of revulsion through me, but it was Kai's reaction that truly shocked me. A low growl rumbled from his chest, audible even through the window. His hands pressed against the glass, claws extending involuntarily as his wolf responded to the threat against me. Easy, I whispered, placing my hand over his. He's trying to provoke a reaction. It's working, Kai ground out through clenched teeth. Outside, Derek was maintaining his composure admirably, though I could see the tension in his shoulders. Is there anything else, Ravencrest? Just one thing. Marcus's expression grew serious. I've heard rumors about a trial. Some nonsense about determining true mates and worthiness. I trust you won't let such foolishness interfere with our agreement. Derek's hesitation lasted only a moment, but it was enough. The trial is an internal pack matter. It won't affect our challenge. Good, because if you try to use ancient loopholes to avoid honoring our agreement. Marcus's power flared, and even the pack warriors took an involuntary step back. I'll bring every allied pack in the Northern Territory down on your heads. This territory will burn, and everyone in it will die, including her. The threat hung in the air like a poisonous cloud. Marcus had just made it clear that any attempt to protect me through legal maneuvering would result in the massacre of innocent pack members. I understand, Derek said quietly. I knew you would. You always were the reasonable type. Marcus began backing away from the border. 3 days, Derek. Enjoy them. They'll be your last. As the Northern Territory Alpha disappeared into the forest, the pack grounds slowly returned to normal. But the atmosphere had changed. Where there had been uncertainty before, now there was fear. He's not bluffing about the allied packs, Kai said grimly. Marcus has been building coalition for months. If Derek loses the challenge, the pack falls. I finished the thought, my heart sinking. And if I try to escape before then, he burns everything to find you. We stood in silence, watching Derek address the gathered pack members. Even from this distance, I could see the weight of leadership pressing down on his shoulders. Whatever his faults, he genuinely cared about the pack's welfare. There has to be another way, I said finally. There is. Kai turned from the window, his expression resolute. The trial. If you can prove you're Derek's true mate and rightful Luna, ancient law protects you from being claimed by another alpha. But Marcus just threatened to destroy the pack if Derek tries to use legal loopholes. The trial isn't a loophole, it's divine judgment. Even Marcus wouldn't dare interfere with the moon goddess's decision. Kai moved closer, his green eyes intense. You have to win, Arya. All 3 tests. It's the only way to save everyone. The pressure was overwhelming. The fate of the entire pack resting on my shoulders, dependent on my ability to prove worthiness in trials I didn't fully understand. What if I'm not Derek's true mate? I asked quietly. What if the moon goddess decides the rejection was justified? Kai's expression softened. Then at least you'll have fought for the right to choose your own fate. Before I could respond, the door burst open and Vanessa strode in, her beautiful face twisted with fury. This is all your fault, she snarled, pointing an accusing finger at me. If you'd just stayed away, none of this would be happening. If Derek hadn't rejected his true mate for political gain, none of this would be happening. I shot back. True mate? Vanessa laughed bitterly. You think you're his true mate? You're delusional. Derek chose me because I'm strong enough to be a Luna. You're just a weak little Omega who can't handle rejection. We'll see about that tomorrow, I said calmly, though my wolf was snarling at the insults. Yes, we will. Vanessa stepped closer, her ice blue eyes glittering with malice. And when I prove that Derek made the right choice, when the moon goddess herself confirms that you're nothing special, maybe you'll finally accept what everyone already knows. Which is, that you were never good enough for him. And you never will be. With that parting shot, she swept out of the room, leaving behind the scent of expensive perfume and barely controlled rage. Charming, Kai said dryly. I can see why Derek chose her. She's right about one thing, I said, sinking into a chair as the weight of everything crashed down on me. I might not be good enough. What if I fail the trials? What if I really am just a weak Omega who can't handle the responsibilities of being a Luna? Kai knelt beside my chair, taking my hands in his larger ones. Look at me. Reluctantly, I met his gaze. You survived 3 weeks as a rogue in hostile territory. You faced down Northern Territory scouts and lived to tell about it. You came back here knowing you'd face humiliation and rejection because it was the right thing to do. His thumbs brushed across my knuckles. That's not weakness, Arya. That's the kind of strength that can't be taught or faked. But what if it's not enough? Then we'll face whatever comes next together, he said simply. But I have faith in you, even if you don't have faith in yourself. Something warm unfurled in my chest at his words. Not the desperate attraction I'd felt for Derek, but something deeper and more stable. Something that felt like home. Kai, I began, but he shook his head. Save your energy for tomorrow. You're going to need it. As if summoned by his words, Elder Patricia appeared in the doorway. It's time, she announced. The trial of strength begins at dawn. Both candidates need to prepare. What exactly will the trial involve? I asked. Patricia's smile was mysterious. You'll face your greatest fear alone, with only your wolf and your courage to guide you. The trial will reveal whether you have the strength to protect those you're sworn to defend. That's not very specific. The moon goddess doesn't deal in specifics, child. She deals in truth. As Elder Patricia led me away to prepare for whatever was coming, I caught one last glimpse of Kai watching from the window. His expression was a mixture of hope and fear that mirrored my own feelings perfectly. Tomorrow would determine whether I was worthy to be a Luna, or whether I was just a rejected mate desperately clinging to a bond that should have been severed weeks ago. Either way, there was no turning back now. Chapter 8. Dawn came too soon and not soon enough. I'd spent the night in one of the pack house's guest rooms, tossing restlessly as my mind churned over possibilities and fears. What constituted my greatest fear? Losing Derek forever? Being claimed by Marcus? Failing the pack that had been my home for most of my life? Or something deeper? The fear that everyone was right, that I truly wasn't strong enough to be a Luna? Elder Patricia arrived as the first rays of sunlight painted the sky pink and gold, carrying a simple white dress that looked ancient even by her standards. Traditional garb for the trials, she explained, laying it carefully on the bed. Blessed by moon priestesses generations ago. It will help you connect with your wolf during the test. The fabric felt strange against my skin. Silk so old it seemed to whisper with the voices of all the women who had worn it before. As I slipped it on, I could swear I felt their strength flowing into me, their courage bolstering my own. You look like a true Luna, Patricia said softly, and something in her tone made me look up sharply. You know something about these trials that you're not telling me. Her ancient eyes crinkled with what might have been amusement. I know many things, child, but the trials must unfold as the moon goddess wills, without interference from old women who've seen too much. Patricia, come. It's time. The pack had gathered in the sacred grove just as the sun crested the horizon. Ancient oak trees formed a natural circle around a clearing that hummed with spiritual energy, their branches seeming to reach toward the fading moon still visible in the dawn sky. Vanessa stood on the opposite side of the circle, wearing an identical white dress that somehow looked less natural on her perfect form. Her blonde hair was braided with silver ribbons, and her face showed no trace of the anxiety that must be eating at her inside. Derek waited in the center of the circle beside two wooden chests, his expression carefully neutral. As Alpha, he would oversee the trial, but ancient law forbade him from showing favoritism to either candidate. The trial of strength, he announced as silence fell over the gathered pack, will test each candidate's ability to face their deepest fear and overcome it through courage and determination. Each woman will be given a choice of weapons and enter the trial space alone. What they face inside is between them and the moon goddess. He gestured to the chests. Choose your tools wisely. You may take only what you can carry. I approached the first chest with Patricia's words echoing in my mind. You'll face your greatest fear alone, with only your wolf and your courage to guide you. Inside the chest lay an array of weapons. Silver daggers, wooden stakes, iron chains, vials of what looked like holy water, and other items I didn't recognize. My hand hovered over a particularly wicked-looking blade before settling on something much simpler. A small silver pendant in the shape of a crescent moon. It felt warm against my palm, and my wolf stirred with recognition. This wasn't a weapon in the traditional sense, but something told me it would be more valuable than any blade. Vanessa chose a silver dagger and an iron chain, practical weapons that spoke to her combat training. She caught my eye across the circle and smirked at my seemingly foolish choice. The trial space awaits, Derek continued, gesturing toward a break in the trees where morning mist seemed to swirl with unnatural thickness. Enter when you're ready. You'll emerge when the trial is complete, or not at all. The mist parted as I approached, revealing a path that hadn't been there moments before. Behind me, I could hear the pack's murmured prayers and well wishes, but they seemed to come from very far away. The moment I stepped into the mist, the world changed. I found myself standing in the ruins of the pack house, but wrong somehow. Darker, colder, with shadows that moved independently of any light source. The acrid smell of smoke filled the air, and in the distance, I could hear screaming. My heart hammered as I recognized the scene from my worst nightmares. The pack under attack, everything I'd ever cared about burning around me. You did this. I spun around to find Marcus Ravencrest standing behind me, but not as I'd seen him yesterday. This version was larger, more monster than man, with eyes that glowed red in the unnatural twilight. You brought this down on them, he continued, his voice echoing strangely. If you'd just accepted your place, if you hadn't fought the rejection, none of this would have happened. That's not true, I said, but my voice sounded weak even to my own ears. Isn't it? Marcus gestured to the burning ruins around us. Look at what your pride has cost them. Images flashed around me like a twisted slideshow. Pack members fleeing in terror, children crying for parents who would never answer, Derek's broken body lying in the ruins of the Great Hall. And standing over it all, Marcus Ravencrest laughing at the destruction. "You could have prevented this," he whispered. "All you had to do was submit." My knees nearly buckled under the weight of guilt and horror. This was my greatest fear. Not personal pain or death, but being responsible for the destruction of everyone I loved. "I could have," I whispered. "Yes." Marcus smiled, showing teeth like broken glass. "But it's not too late. Submit to me now, and I'll make it quick. Your pack doesn't have to suffer for your mistakes." The offer was tempting in its simplicity. End the trial, accept Marcus's claim, and save everyone else from the consequences of my defiance. But as I reached for the pendant around my neck, something else stirred in my memory. Kai's voice, steady and sure. "You have more power than anyone has ever told you." And Patricia's words. "The trials reveal truth." This wasn't real. It was a test designed to break me by showing me my worst fears. But fears weren't facts, and nightmares weren't prophecy. "No," I said firmly, straightening my spine. Marcus's expression darkened. "No, this isn't real. And even if it were, cowering in fear wouldn't save anyone." The pendant grew warm in my hand. "A true Luna doesn't submit to threats. She fights. You think you can fight me?" Marcus laughed, his form growing larger and more monstrous. "You're nothing. A weak little Omega who. I'm done listening to you tell me what I am." Power flooded through me as my wolf rose to the surface, not in fear but in fury. The pendant blazed with silver light, and suddenly I could see the trial space for what it really was. An illusion designed to test my resolve. "I am Arya Wells," I declared, my voice carrying new authority. "Daughter of warriors, student of the ancient ways, and I will not be cowed by fears or phantoms." The false Marcus snarled and lunged toward me, but I was ready. Instead of dodging, I stepped forward to meet him, the pendant's light burning away his monstrous form like morning sun dispelling shadows. "I choose courage over fear," I said as he dissolved. "I choose action over paralysis. And I choose to fight for my pack, not surrender to those who would harm them." The ruined landscape around me shimmered and faded, replaced by the sacred grove where the pack waited. I stood in the center of the circle, the pendant still glowing softly in my hand. "The trial of strength is complete," Elder Patricia announced, though her voice seemed to come from very far away. "Arya Wells has faced her greatest fear and emerged victorious." Cheers erupted from some pack members, while others remained silent. I caught Kai's eye across the circle and saw pride shining in his green gaze. But there was no time to savor the victory. Vanessa was already approaching the mist for her own trial, her face set with grim determination. "Don't celebrate yet," she said as she passed me. "One test down, 2 to go." She disappeared into the mist, and we settled in to wait. The trial of strength had tested my courage. But what would the remaining trials demand? And more importantly, would proving my worth be enough to save the pack from the war that was coming? Chapter 9. Vanessa's trial lasted nearly twice as long as mine, and when she finally emerged from the mist, she looked shaken in a way I'd never seen before. Her perfect composure was cracked, her ice-blue eyes haunted by whatever she'd faced in that otherworldly space. She carried the silver dagger in a white-knuckled grip, its blade stained with something dark that might have been blood, or something worse. When Derek moved to approach her, she flinched away from his touch. "The trial of strength is complete," Elder Patricia announced again, though her expression remained carefully neutral. "Both candidates have proven their courage in the face of their deepest fears." "What happens now?" I asked, though part of me dreaded the answer. "Now we rest. The trial of wisdom begins at sunset." Patricia's ancient gaze moved between Vanessa and me. "Use the time to prepare yourselves. The next test will be different." As the pack began to disperse, I noticed several members approaching me with cautious respect. Word of what had happened in the trial space was already spreading, though I wondered how much they truly understood. "Arya." Derek's voice made me turn. He stood a few feet away, his steel-gray eyes unreadable. "We need to talk." I followed him to a secluded spot near the pack house, aware of curious eyes tracking our movement. Whatever Derek wanted to discuss, it was clearly meant to be private. "What you did in there," he began, then stopped, running a hand through his dark hair. "The power I felt when you emerged. That wasn't normal wolf strength." "I don't know what you mean. Don't lie to me." His voice carried the alpha command that had once made me submit without question. Now it simply rolled off me like water. That pendant you chose, I felt it respond to you. Silver shouldn't warm to a wolf's touch, Arya. It should burn. The pendant still hung around my neck, and I touched it instinctively. He was right. Silver was supposed to be toxic to our kind, a weakness that could be exploited by hunters. But the crescent moon felt as natural against my skin as my own heartbeat. Maybe there are things about wolves that even alphas don't understand, I said carefully. Derek's expression darkened. Are you saying I'm ignorant? I'm saying that rejecting your mate before understanding what she truly was might have been premature. The words hung between us like a challenge. For a moment, I thought Derek might respond with anger or dismissal. Instead, something vulnerable flickered across his features. Do you think I wanted to reject you? He asked quietly. Do you think it was easy to stand up there and deny what every instinct was screaming at me to claim? Then why did you do it? Because, he stopped, seeming to wrestle with himself. Because I was afraid. The admission shocked me into silence. Derek Blackstone, alpha of the Moonridge Pack, afraid? Of what? I whispered. Of not being worthy of you. The words came out in a rush, as if he'd been holding them back for weeks. You think I rejected you because you were weak. It was the opposite. You were everything I wasn't: brave, compassionate, willing to sacrifice for the good of others. And I knew that eventually, you'd see me for what I really am. Which is a coward who inherited his position instead of earning it. A leader who makes decisions based on fear instead of wisdom. Derek's laugh was bitter. Marcus was right about one thing. I am weak. Too weak to deserve a mate like you. The confession left me reeling. All this time, I'd believed Derek rejected me because I wasn't good enough. To learn it was the opposite, that his own insecurities had driven him to push me away. Derek, I said softly, you're not. Don't. He held up a hand. Don't try to comfort me or tell me I'm wrong. We both know the truth now. His eyes met mine. But I want you to know that whatever happens with these trials, whatever the moon goddess decides, I'll respect her judgment, even if it means admitting my mistakes. Before I could respond, he was walking away, leaving me alone with my churning thoughts and the growing weight of the pendant around my neck. I spent the afternoon in the Pack's library, researching everything I could find about the ancient trials. Most of the texts were frustratingly vague, speaking in metaphors and riddles that seemed designed to obscure rather than inform. But one passage, written in the archaic script of the first Pacts, caught my attention. The goddess chooses her vessels with care, marking them for purposes beyond mortal understanding. Those who would lead her children must prove themselves worthy not only of power, but of the wisdom to use it justly. For in the end, strength without wisdom is mere brutality, and wisdom without strength is powerless to protect what matters most. Vessels. Marked. The words echoed in my mind as I touched the pendant again, feeling its strange warmth pulse in rhythm with my heartbeat. Interesting reading? I looked up to find Kai settling into the chair across from me, his green eyes curious as they took in the ancient texts scattered across the table. Confusing reading, I corrected. Nothing about these trials makes sense. Why now? Why me? And what's so special about this pendant that Derek thinks it shouldn't work for normal wolves? Kai leaned forward, his expression growing serious. Can I see it? I hesitated, then lifted the chain over my head and handed it to him. The moment it left my skin, the pendant went cold and dull, looking like nothing more than ordinary silver. Interesting, Kai murmured, turning it over in his hands. It's definitely old, older than the pack house, maybe older than the territory itself. He looked up at me. But it's completely inert now. Whatever power it has, it responds only to you. That's not possible. I'm nobody special. Are you? Kai's eyes held mine. Think about it, Arya. You survived 3 weeks as a rogue when most wolves would have died in 3 days. You passed the trial of strength so decisively that even Derek noticed the power you wielded. And now you're wearing an ancient artifact that only responds to your touch. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting that maybe your rejection wasn't a mistake or a tragedy. Maybe it was necessary to awaken something that was always inside you. He handed the pendant back, and I immediately felt its warmth return as it touched my skin. Maybe the moon goddess had plans for you that required you to be free of pack bonds. The idea was both thrilling and terrifying. If Kai was right, then everything I'd suffered, the rejection, the exile, the loneliness, had been leading to this moment. But if that's true, I said slowly. Then winning these trials isn't just about proving I'm worthy to be Derek's mate. It's about proving I'm worthy of something else. Something bigger, Kai agreed. Something that goes beyond pack politics and mate bonds. Before I could ask what he meant, the sound of a horn echoed across the pack grounds. The signal that sunset was approaching. Time for the trial of wisdom, I said, closing the ancient text. Arya. Kai caught my hand as I stood. Whatever happens in there, remember what you learned in the first trial. Trust your instincts. Trust your power. And if my instincts are wrong, then we'll deal with the consequences together. His thumb brushed across my knuckles. But I don't think they will be. As we walked toward the sacred grove where the pack was already gathering, I felt the pendant pulse against my chest like a second heartbeat. Whatever the trial of wisdom demanded, I would face it with courage. But I couldn't shake the feeling that this test would reveal truths I wasn't prepared to handle. About myself, about the pack, and about the destiny that seemed to be unfolding around me whether I wanted it or not. Chapter 10. The sacred grove had transformed in the hours since the morning trial. Torches now ringed the clearing, their flames dancing in the evening breeze and casting shifting shadows across the ancient oaks. The pack gathered in respectful silence as Elder Patricia took her place at the center of the circle. The trial of wisdom, she announced, her voice carrying easily through the still air. Tests not strength of body, but strength of mind and spirit. Each candidate will face a choice that will reveal the true nature of her heart. Vanessa stood beside me, her earlier composure restored, but something brittle in her manner. Whatever she'd faced in the trial of strength had changed her, though she was working hard to hide it. There are no weapons for this trial, Patricia continued. No tools save your own judgment. But be warned, the choices you make here will have consequences that extend far beyond this circle. A chill ran down my spine at her words. Unlike the trial of strength, which had been clearly fantastical, this sounded disturbingly real. Vanessa Thorne, Patricia called. You will go first. Vanessa stepped forward with her head held high, every inch the perfect Luna candidate. As she approached the mist-shrouded entrance to the trial space, she caught Derek's eye and something passed between them. A look of understanding or encouragement that made my chest tighten with unexpected jealousy. Then she was gone, swallowed by the swirling mist. We waited, and waited. Time seemed to stretch endlessly as the pack shifted restlessly around the grove. I found myself checking the position of the moon, watching it climb higher in the darkening sky. How long was this trial supposed to last? Something's wrong, Kai murmured beside me, voicing what we were all thinking. Derek's face was a mask of controlled worry, but I could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his hands clenched and unclenched at his sides. Whatever was happening in the trial space, it was taking far longer than anyone had expected. Finally, just as the moon reached its zenith, Vanessa emerged. But she wasn't alone. A figure stumbled out of the mist behind her. A young pack member named Jamie, barely 16, and one of the newest additions to our territory. His clothes were torn, his face streaked with tears, and when he collapsed to his knees in the center of the circle, I could smell blood. Jamie! His mother rushed forward from the crowd, but Elder Patricia held up a hand to stop her. The trial is not yet complete, she said gravely. Vanessa Thorne, explain what transpired. Vanessa's face was pale but resolute. I found him being attacked by rogues on the eastern border. 3 of them, armed with silver weapons. I had to choose between pursuing the trial's objective and saving his life. And you chose. I chose to save him. Vanessa's chin lifted defiantly. Whatever the trial was testing, it wasn't worth letting an innocent pack member die. Murmurs of approval rippled through the crowd. It was exactly the kind of noble sacrifice that made for legendary Luna stories, putting the welfare of pack members above personal ambition. But something felt wrong. The timing was too convenient, the scenario too perfectly designed to make Vanessa look heroic. And when I caught Jamie's eye, I saw something there that made my wolf stir uneasily. Fear. But not the kind of fear that came from a rogue attack. Jamie, Elder Patricia said gently, tell us what happened. The young wolf's eyes darted nervously between Vanessa and Derek before settling on the ground. I was on patrol when they found me. 3 rogues, just like she said. They had silver knives and... He trailed off, touching a bandage on his arm where blood had seeped through. And Vanessa saved you? Yes, he whispered, but the words sounded forced. Jamie. I stepped forward, ignoring the sharp look Derek shot me. Look at me. The young wolf's head came up reluctantly, and I saw it, the glazed look of someone under compulsion. Vanessa had used her Luna candidate authority to manipulate his memories, to make him believe her version of events. Tell us the truth, I said gently, putting just enough power behind the words to counter Vanessa's influence. What really happened? Jamie's eyes cleared suddenly, confusion replacing the artificial calm. I was sleeping in my quarters when someone grabbed me. They dragged me into the forest and cut me with silver. Told me what to say if anyone asked. The grove erupted in shocked murmurs. Derek's face went white with rage as he turned toward Vanessa, but she was already backing away. He's confused, she said quickly. The trauma of the attack. Enough. Elder Patricia's voice cut through the chaos like a blade. Vanessa Thorne, you have failed the trial of wisdom spectacularly. Not only did you attempt to deceive the moon goddess herself, but you harmed an innocent pack member to do it. I was protecting my position, my right to be Luna. Vanessa's perfect mask finally cracked, revealing the desperation beneath. Arya doesn't deserve Derek. She's weak, she's broken, She's about to take her trial, Patricia interrupted coldly, whereas you are about to be escorted from pack territory. Permanently. Derek looked like he'd been carved from stone, his earlier vulnerability replaced by the cold fury of a betrayed alpha. Get her out of my sight, he said quietly, and several warriors immediately moved to flank Vanessa. As they led her away, still protesting her innocence, I felt a mixture of pity and relief. Pity for a woman who'd been so desperate to hold on to power that she'd lost herself in the pursuit of it. Relief that I no longer had to compete with someone willing to hurt innocent people for personal gain. Arya Wells, Elder Patricia called. Your turn. I stepped forward on unsteady legs, my mind still reeling from Vanessa's fall from grace. The pendant around my neck pulsed with warmth, as if responding to my elevated heart rate. Remember, Patricia said quietly as I approached the mist, wisdom is not about making the right choice. It's about understanding the consequences of your choices and accepting responsibility for them. Then I was stepping into the trial space, leaving the safety of the grove behind. This time, the mist didn't dissolve into illusion. Instead, I found myself in what appeared to be a perfect replica of the pack's council chamber, complete down to the last detail. Sunlight streamed through the windows, and I could hear the normal sounds of pack life outside. But I wasn't alone. 3 figures sat at the council table, and my heart nearly stopped when I recognized them. Derek, Kai, and a woman who looked exactly like me, but older, more confident, wearing the silver circlet of a Luna. Finally, the other Arya said, looking up from a stack of papers. We've been waiting for you. Who are you? I asked, though I already suspected the answer. I'm you. Or rather, I'm who you could become. She gestured to the men flanking her. And these are the choices that will shape that future. Derek looked up at me with love and admiration in his steel-gray eyes. Choose me, and I'll spend the rest of my life making up for the mistake I made. Together, we can lead this pack. Choose me, Kai said softly, and we'll build something new. A partnership based on mutual respect and genuine love, not just mate bonds. Or, the other Arya said with a smile, choose neither. Accept the power that's awakening inside you and forge your own path. Become something more than any Luna has ever been. What kind of choice is that? I protested. How can I choose between people I care about? Every choice has a cost, the other Arya replied. Choose Derek, and you'll always wonder if he truly loves you or just needs you for political stability. Choose Kai, and you'll destroy his friendship with Derek and split the pack. Choose yourself, and you'll be alone, powerful, but isolated. There has to be another option. There's always another option. But wisdom isn't about finding the perfect solution. It's about understanding that every choice comes with sacrifice and being willing to bear the weight of those sacrifices. I looked at each of the figures in turn, seeing the potential futures spread out before me like a map. Derek offered security and tradition, but shadowed by doubt. Kai offered genuine love, but at the cost of pack unity. And the path of power that led into darkness I couldn't yet comprehend. What does the pack need? I asked finally. The other Arya smiled. Now you're asking the right question. Chapter 11. The question hung in the air as I studied the 3 paths before me, each representing not just personal choice, but the fate of everyone I cared about. The pendant around my neck grew warmer, as if responding to the weight of the decision. The pack needs stability, Derek said, leaning forward earnestly. A strong Alpha-Luna bond that can withstand challenges like Marcus Ravencrest. Choose me, and we'll present a united front that no enemy can break. The pack needs change, Kai countered, his green eyes intense. The old ways aren't working anymore. Choose me, and we'll modernize, adapt, create a new model of leadership that serves everyone, not just the elite. The pack needs protection, the other Arya said quietly, from threats they can't even imagine yet. Choose the power awakening within you, and you'll be able to guard them against dangers that conventional strength cannot face. I closed my eyes, trying to center myself amidst the swirling possibilities. What did the pack truly need? Not what I wanted, not what would make me happy, but what would serve the greater good. Images flashed through my mind. Marcus Ravencrest's predatory smile, the fear in Jaime's eyes, the way the pack had watched me emerge from the trial of strength with something approaching awe. And beneath it all, a growing awareness of the pendant's purpose. Not just ornamental, but a key to something larger. You're all offering me parts of the truth, I said, opening my eyes. But none of you are showing me the whole picture. The other Arya raised an eyebrow. Explain. Derek, you want me to choose stability, but your rejection created the very instability you're now trying to fix. Kai, you want me to choose change, but revolution without foundation leads to chaos. And this power, I touched the pendant. Power without wisdom is just another form of tyranny. So what do you choose? Derek asked. I choose all of them, and none of them. The three figures stared at me in confusion, but I felt a certainty growing in my chest like dawn breaking. The pack doesn't need me to choose between these paths. It needs me to forge a new one. Derek, I'll work with you to provide the stability the pack requires, but not as your mate. As your equal, your partner in leadership. I turned to Kai. And I'll work with you to implement the changes that are necessary, but gradually, with respect for tradition where it serves us. And the power? The other Arya asked. The power serves the pack. Not my ambition, not anyone else's agenda, but the welfare of our people. I felt the pendant pulse against my skin. Whatever I'm becoming, whatever this artifact represents, it's not about personal glory. It's about protection. The council chamber began to shimmer around the edges, reality bending as the trial responded to my choice. You understand, the other Arya said with satisfaction, that this path will be harder than any of the others? You'll be alone in many ways, carrying burdens that no one else can share. I understand, but leadership isn't about taking the easy path. It's about taking the right one, even if it means giving up the traditional mate bond you've always wanted. That was the hardest question of all. The dream of being Derek's true mate, of having that perfect love story the moon goddess supposedly blessed. It was what I'd wanted since I was old enough to understand what mates were. But dreams and reality were different things. And the pack needed a Luna who could see clearly, not one blinded by romantic fantasies. Even then, I said firmly, the trial space dissolved around me, and I found myself back in the sacred grove. The pack watched in expectant silence as Elder Patricia approached, her ancient eyes studying my face with interest. The trial of wisdom is complete, she announced. Arya Wells has proven that true wisdom lies not in choosing between options presented, but in finding new solutions that serve the greater good. Relief washed through the gathered wolves, but I could see questions in their eyes. What exactly had I chosen? What did my trial mean for the pack's future? Derek stepped forward, his expression unreadable. Arya, what you said in there. We'll discuss it later, I said quietly. After the final trial, because there was still one test remaining, the trial of heart. And somehow, I suspected it would be the most difficult of all. Elder Patricia raised her staff, its silver head catching the moonlight. The final trial will take place tomorrow night, under the full moon. Both candidates will. Elder, I interrupted. Vanessa has been disqualified. There's only one candidate remaining. No, Patricia said with a mysterious smile. There are still two candidates for the position of Luna. The trial revealed that truth as well. Confused murmurs rippled through the pack. Who could the second candidate be? Vanessa was gone, and no other unmated females held the rank necessary to challenge for the Luna position. The answer came from an unexpected source. I invoked the right of challenge. A clear voice called from the edge of the grove. Every head turned as a figure stepped into the torchlight. A woman I didn't recognize, tall and elegant with silver hair that caught the moonlight like spun metal. She wore the traveling clothes of a lone wolf, but there was something regal in her bearing that spoke of high birth. "I am Lydia Moonwhisper, daughter of the Northern Territories, and I claim the right to compete for the position of Luna of the Moonridge Pack." Derek's face went white. "Moonwhisper, you're Marcus Ravencrest's sister." "Half-sister," she corrected calmly, "and his greatest enemy. I've come to prevent him from claiming what he believes is his by right, both this territory and this woman." Her eyes found mine across the grove, and I felt a shock of recognition. Not because I'd seen her before, but because something in her presence resonated with the pendant around my neck. "Who are you?" I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted to hear the answer. Lydia smiled, and there was both sadness and determination in the expression. "I'm your sister, Arya, and I've come to help you understand what you really are." The grove erupted in shocked voices and confused questions, but all I could hear was the thundering of my own heartbeat and the sudden, urgent pulsing of the pendant against my chest. "Sister." The word echoed in my mind as I stared at this stranger who claimed kinship with me. It should have been impossible. I was an orphan, my parents long dead in a rogue attack when I was barely old enough to remember them. But as I looked into Lydia's eyes, I saw something that couldn't be denied. The same unusual golden flecks that stared back at me from every mirror, the same stubborn set to the jaw, the same way of holding her head when determined. "This is impossible," Derek said, voicing what everyone was thinking. "Is it?" Lydia asked mildly. "Elder Patricia, surely you remember the Moonwhisper bloodline? The family that served as moon priestesses for generations before the Great Schism." Patricia's face had gone pale, her ancient hands trembling on her staff. "You were all supposed to be dead. The purge scattered us but didn't destroy us entirely," Lydia finished. "Some of us survived. Some of us have been waiting for the right moment to reclaim our heritage." Her gaze returned to me. "And some of us have been hiding in plain sight, protected by adoptive families who never knew what they were truly sheltering." The world seemed to tilt around me as the implications sank in. If Lydia was telling the truth, then everything I'd believed about my origins was a lie. I wasn't just an orphan pack member. I was part of a bloodline that predated the current pack structure, connected to powers and responsibilities I couldn't even begin to understand. "The final trial," Patricia said shakily, "will determine not only who is worthy to be Luna, but who has the right to claim the Moonwhisper legacy." She looked directly at me. "Are you prepared for that responsibility, child?" I touched the pendant, feeling its warmth spread through my entire body. Whatever was coming, whatever truths the final trial would reveal, there was no turning back now. "I'm ready," I said, and meant it. Chapter 12. The revelation that I might be part of an ancient bloodline of moon priestesses sent shockwaves through the pack that were still reverberating the next evening. Hushed conversations followed me wherever I went, filled with speculation and wonder that made me deeply uncomfortable. I'd spent the day in the archives with Elder Patricia, learning about the Moonwhisper family and their role in wolf history. What I discovered both fascinated and terrified me. The Moonwhispers had been more than just priestesses. They'd been the bridge between the wolf packs and the moon goddess herself, wielding powers that went far beyond normal shifter abilities. They could commune directly with lunar energy, heal injuries that should have been fatal, and most importantly, they could sense the true nature of mate bonds with absolute certainty. "That's why the pendant responds to you," Patricia explained as we pored over ancient texts. "It was forged for the Moonwhisper bloodline, designed to amplify their natural connection to lunar magic. In the wrong hands, it's just decorative silver. But for a true descendant, it becomes a conduit for power I don't understand," I finished grimly. "Power you'll need to understand if Lydia is telling the truth about Marcus." Patricia's expression was grave. "The Moonwhispers weren't just scattered randomly, child. They were hunted, systematically eliminated by those who feared their ability to expose false mate bonds and corrupt leadership. And you think Marcus was involved? I think Marcus comes from a family that has spent generations trying to claim power they were never meant to wield. If he knew there was a surviving Moonwhisper in this territory, the implication was clear. My presence wasn't just a complication in Marcus's plans. It was a direct threat to everything he'd worked toward. Now, as the full moon rose over the sacred grove, I stood with Lydia at the edge of the trial space, both of us wearing the ancient white dresses that had been blessed by generations of moon priestesses. But where my dress felt foreign and strange, Lydia moved in hers like it was her natural skin. "Nervous?" she asked quietly, her silver hair gleaming in the moonlight. "Terrified," I admitted. "If we're really sisters, why didn't you come forward sooner? Why wait until now?" Lydia's expression grew sad. "Because I hoped you could live a normal life. The Moonwhisper legacy is demanding. It requires sacrifices that most people aren't prepared to make." She looked at me seriously. "It's not too late to walk away, Arya. Choose a normal mate bond, live as a regular Luna, let the old powers sleep. And if I do that, then Marcus gets what he wants. This pack falls, others follow, and the corruption spreads until there's nothing left worth protecting." Lydia touched her own pendant, identical to mine but somehow more vibrant, as if it had been awakened longer. "The choice is yours. But choose knowing that power always comes with a price." Before I could respond, Elder Patricia called for attention. The pack had gathered in larger numbers than ever before, word having spread to neighboring territories about the trial that would determine the future of not just Moonridge, but possibly the entire region. "The trial of heart," Patricia announced, her voice carrying clearly through the still night air, "is the most sacred of the 3 tests. It will reveal the true nature of mate bonds, the depth of loyalty, and the strength of love, both romantic and familial." Derek stood with the pack elders, his face carefully neutral, but I could see the tension in his shoulders. Kai was there too, his green eyes never leaving my face. Whatever happened tonight would change everything between us. "Unlike the previous trials," Patricia continued, "this test will be witnessed by all. The moon goddess demands transparency in matters of the heart." She gestured toward the center of the grove, where a new addition had appeared. A pool of water so perfectly still it looked like liquid silver in the moonlight. "The sacred pool reflects truth," Patricia explained. "Look into its depths, and you will see the reality of your bonds, your loves, your deepest desires. But be warned, what you see cannot be unseen, and the truth it reveals will be binding." Lydia stepped forward first, her movements graceful and confident. As she knelt beside the pool and gazed into its depths, the water began to glow with soft silver light. Images formed in the luminous surface, scenes I didn't recognize but somehow understood. A young Lydia being trained by older women in robes, learning to channel lunar energy. The same Lydia, older now, standing over the bodies of her murdered family, her face twisted with grief and rage. And finally, Lydia traveling alone for years, searching for something she'd lost. "I see my purpose," she said clearly, her voice carrying to every member of the pack. "To protect the last of my bloodline and ensure the Moonwhisper legacy survives. My heart belongs not to any mate, but to duty and family." The pool's glow faded as she stood and stepped back. Now it was my turn. My knees trembled as I approached the sacred pool, aware of every eye upon me. The pendant around my neck pulsed in rhythm with my heartbeat, and I could feel lunar energy building in the air like the approach of a storm. I knelt and looked into the water. The images that appeared stole my breath. I saw Derek as he truly was. Not the confident alpha he pretended to be, but a man struggling with insecurities and the weight of inherited responsibility. I felt his genuine love for me, tangled up with fear and political necessity. The mate bond between us glowed like a golden thread, real but strained by rejection and doubt. Then the scene shifted and I saw Kai. The depth of his feelings hit me like a physical blow. Love so pure and selfless it made my chest ache. He would sacrifice everything for my happiness, even if it meant watching me choose another. But there was no mate bond between us, just deep affection and mutual respect. The water shimmered again, showing me something that made me gasp aloud. Myself, but transformed. Power flowed around me like visible light, and my eyes glowed with lunar energy. I stood not as anyone's mate, but as something entirely new, a bridge between the mortal world and the divine, a guardian whose responsibility transcended pack politics and personal desires. But the final image was the most shocking of all. Marcus Ravencrest, but not as I'd seen him before. This version was accompanied by others, men and women whose faces I didn't recognize, but whose intent was clear. They moved through pack territories like a plague, destroying everything in their path. And at their head, Marcus wore a crown of black metal that seemed to absorb light itself. "The Shadow Court," Lydia breathed beside me, having seen the same vision. "They've found a way to corrupt the ancient bonds. Marcus isn't just seeking territory. He's trying to unmake the moon goddess's authority entirely." I stood on shaking legs, the truth of what I'd seen still pulsing through my mind. The pendant was burning against my chest now, responding to the lunar energy that filled the grove. "I see my path," I said, my voice stronger than I felt. "The mate bond with Derek is real, but it's not the most important thing about me. My heart belongs to this pack, to protecting them from threats they can't even imagine. And my destiny," I touched the pendant. "My destiny is to stand against the Shadow Court, whatever the cost." The sacred pool erupted with silver light that washed over the entire grove. When it faded, I was no longer wearing just a pendant. The lunar energy had spread throughout my body, making my skin glow with soft radiance and my eyes shine with otherworldly power. "The trial of heart is complete," Elder Patricia announced, her voice filled with awe. "The moon goddess has chosen her vessel." But even as the pack began to cheer, a howl echoed from the forest, long, mournful, and filled with rage. Marcus had arrived early, and he wasn't alone. Chapter 13. The howls multiplied as Marcus Ravencrest's army emerged from the forest like shadows given form. Dozens of wolves surrounded the sacred grove, their eyes glowing red in the moonlight, a sign of corruption that made my newly awakened senses recoil in horror. "The Shadow Court," Lydia said grimly, power beginning to gather around her as her own pendant flared to life. "They've accelerated their timeline." Derek immediately began shouting orders, his alpha voice cutting through the panic as pack members scattered to defensive positions. But we were outnumbered 3-1, and these weren't ordinary rogues. They moved with unnatural coordination, as if controlled by a single malevolent will. Marcus himself stepped into the grove's torchlight, no longer bothering to maintain his human facade. Dark energy wreathed his form like smoke, and the black crown I'd seen in the sacred pool's vision rested on his brow. When he smiled, his teeth gleamed like obsidian. "Well, well," he said, his voice carrying an otherworldly echo. "Look what we have here. 2 little moon whispers playing at being goddesses." His red eyes fixed on me. "Hello, Arya. You've grown into your power nicely." "You know what I am," I said, stepping forward despite every instinct screaming at me to run. "I've known since the day you were born, little priestess. Did you really think your parents' deaths were random? Did you think it was coincidence that brought you to this territory, to this pack?" Marcus laughed, the sound like breaking glass. "I've been cultivating you for years, waiting for your power to manifest so I could claim it for myself." The revelation hit me like a physical blow. My parents hadn't died in a random rogue attack. They'd been murdered specifically because of what I was. And everything since then, my entire life, had been part of Marcus's long-term plan. "The mate bond rejection," I breathed, understanding flooding through me. "You influenced Derek somehow." Influenced is such a crude word. Let's say I encouraged his existing insecurities. Made sure he would push you away when your power began to awaken. Marcus took a step closer, and the air around him shimmered with dark energy. A moonwhisper's abilities are strongest when she's isolated, desperate, angry. "You've been perfectly seasoned, my dear." "Over my dead body," Derek snarled, moving to stand beside me. "That can certainly be arranged," Marcus replied pleasantly. In fact, I was counting on it. The battle erupted without warning as Marcus's corrupted wolves launched themselves at the pack's defensive line. But this wasn't ordinary combat. Dark magic clashed with natural wolf strength, creating explosions of energy that lit up the night sky. I felt the pendant's power surge through me as my newfound abilities activated instinctively. Silver light poured from my hands, creating barriers that held back the Shadow Court's advance. But I could already feel the strain. This kind of magic demanded a price I wasn't sure I could pay. "Arya." Lydia appeared beside me, her own power flaring as she deflected a blast of dark energy. "We need to combine our strength. The pendant responds to bloodline unity." "How?" "Trust me. And whatever happens, don't let go." She grasped my hand, and immediately I felt our powers merging, amplifying each other in ways that should have been impossible. The silver light around us intensified until it was nearly blinding, pushing back the shadows that threatened to overwhelm the grove. But Marcus was ready for this. He raised his hands, and the black crown on his head pulsed with malevolent energy. "You think your little light show can stop the inevitable? I've been preparing for this confrontation for decades." Dark power slammed into our combined barrier like a battering ram. The impact sent both Lydia and me to our knees, but we held on, pouring everything we had into maintaining the protection around our pack. "This is taking too long," Lydia gasped, blood trickling from her nose. The longer we fight defensively, the more pack members die. She was right. Even with our combined power, we were being slowly overwhelmed. Marcus's forces were too numerous, too well-coordinated. We needed a different strategy. The sacred pool, I said suddenly. If it can reveal truth, maybe it can also banish lies. The corruption binding his army to his will, Lydia breathed, understanding immediately. If we can sever those connections, they'll be free to choose their own path. It was desperate and dangerous. We'd have to drop our defensive barriers and trust that we could reach the pool before Marcus could stop us. But it might be our only chance. Derek, I called out. We need cover to reach the sacred pool. He didn't hesitate, despite the chaos surrounding him. Kai, Torres, Henderson, form up on the priestesses. The most trusted members of his inner circle converged on our position, creating a protective wedge that cut through the battlefield toward the center of the grove. I could see the strain on Derek's face as he fought to keep us moving, his alpha strength pushed to its limits. A corrupted wolf broke through their line, lunging directly at me with claws extended. Before I could react, Kai intercepted the attack, taking the creature's claws across his chest as he drove his own claws into its throat. Keep moving, he shouted, blood staining his shirt. We reached the sacred pool, just as Marcus realized what we were attempting. His roar of fury shook the ancient oaks, and dark energy began building around him like a storm front. You cannot unmake what has been bound by blood and shadow, he snarled. Watch us, I replied, kneeling beside the pool with Lydia. We plunged our joined hands into the sacred water, and immediately the silver glow intensified beyond anything I'd experienced before. But this time, instead of showing us visions, the pool became a conduit for our combined power. Waves of pure lunar energy poured out from the water, washing over the battlefield like cleansing fire. Where it touched Marcus's corrupted wolves, the red glow faded from their eyes and they stumbled, suddenly freed from the compulsion that had bound them. No, Marcus screamed, pouring his own power into maintaining control over his army. I will not be denied. The clash of energies created a maelstrom at the center of the grove. Light and shadow wrestled for dominance, while the very air crackled with competing magics. I could feel my strength ebbing, the pendant's power demanding more than my mortal body could sustain. Hold on, Lydia whispered beside me, though I could see she was struggling just as much. But Marcus was stronger than both of us combined, his power drawn from sources I didn't want to contemplate. Slowly, inevitably, the darkness began to push back our light. That's when Derek did something that changed everything. He stepped directly into the conflicting energies, his hand closing over both mine and Lydia's where they rested in the sacred pool. The moment he made contact, I felt it. The true mate bond, not just between Derek and me, but somehow extending to encompass the entire pack. An alpha's first duty, he said through gritted teeth as power flowed through him, is to protect his people. All of them. The bond amplified our magic beyond anything I could have imagined. Every pack member connected to Derek became a conduit for lunar energy, their combined will and love creating a force that no amount of shadow could withstand. Marcus's scream of defeat echoed across the forest as his dark power shattered like glass. The black crown crumbled to dust, and he collapsed to his knees, suddenly looking like nothing more than a broken old man. The corrupted wolves, now free of his influence, began to flee into the forest. Some paused to bow their heads in acknowledgement before disappearing into the night, grateful for their liberation but unable to remain where they'd caused so much pain. As the silver light faded, I found myself supported by Derek's strong arms, utterly drained but victorious. Around us, the pack was stirring, tending to their wounded and marveling at what they'd witnessed. Is it over? I asked weakly. This battle is, Lydia replied, though she looked as exhausted as I felt. But there will be others. The Shadow Court has been dealt a serious blow tonight, but they won't abandon their goals easily. Derek helped me to my feet, his steel-gray eyes filled with an emotion I couldn't quite name. Arya, what happened when I touched the pool? I felt everything. Your strength, your purpose, the weight of what you're becoming. And I understand now why the moon goddess brought us together. He cupped my face gently. Not as mates in the traditional sense, but as partners in something larger. You don't need to be my Luna. You need to be something far more important. Which is yourself, he said simply. The guardian this world needs, with a pack that will stand behind you no matter what comes. I looked around the grove at the faces surrounding me. Derek, Kai, Lydia, Elder Patricia, and all the pack members who had fought so bravely tonight. They looked at me not with the worship reserved for distant goddesses, but with the respect given to family. "So what happens now?" I asked. "Now," said Elder Patricia, approaching with a smile that made her ancient face radiant. "We rebuild. The old ways and the new, tradition and change, all working together." She looked at Derek and Kai standing on either side of me. "It seems the moon goddess has quite a sense of humor about pack dynamics." "What do you mean?" "3 leaders for 1 pack. An alpha to provide strength and stability, a beta to guide change and growth, and a moon whisper to protect against threats beyond mortal understanding." Patricia's eyes twinkled. "It's unconventional, but then again, so are you." As the first rays of dawn began to paint the eastern sky, I felt a sense of peace settle over me for the first time in months. The trials were over, Marcus was defeated, and I finally understood my place in the world. I wasn't Derek's rejected mate or Kai's forbidden love. I wasn't even really a traditional Luna. I was Arya Wells, the last moon whisperer of Moonridge territory, and I had found my pack. Not through bonds of blood or romance, but through choice, sacrifice, and shared purpose. And that, I realized, was the strongest foundation of all. The end.